For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
WKXX Live on a Thursday. Welcome in. Hope you're having a great day on the first day of December. We'll flip the calendar over. Last month of 2022. I feel like November went by about 120 miles an hour, and it's hard to believe we're already in the month of December.
I was going to take it back a little even further. I feel like we were just here in SEC Media Days back in mid-July, and then I feel like between the summer and the fall, just the end of summer and the entire fall, I felt like that just flew by, and I mean, honestly, the entire year kind of did it. I think a lot of people, I don't know how most people felt out there. I feel like 2022 felt like the first completely normal year where, COVID and all that kind of stuff wasn't on anybody's minds. Last year still kind of had the back end of it, but 2022 to me has just completely flown by, and it's really been accelerated with the football season.
It has. Football season always goes by fast. I feel like this year though it went by very fast, and here we are at championship week in high school football, conference championships in college football. Piedmont playing right now in the 3A state championship, and it has been all St. James in the second half as St. James leads the Piedmont Bulldogs with around 6 minutes to go in the ball game. St. James leads there. They scored 5 touchdowns in the second half.
Yeah.
And boy, KJ Jackson, their quarterback, has taken it to another level.
He certainly has. He's a three-star, 4-star guy, depending on what recruiting service you look at. Has offers from all across the state. Not Auburn, Alabama, according to 24/7 Sports, but he's been phenomenal. There was at one point in the second half, he was 4 of 6 passing, 4 touchdowns, and that was his stat line going into the fourth quarter. He's been sensational. He's really led a tremendous charge for St. James. Piedmont went into the half with the lead, 20-10. St. James since then has been on a 28-8 run in the second half, and he's been the real catalyst behind that. We've seen big plays. Piedmont's been very, very solid. They haven't been able to put together consistent offense, but give a whole lot of credit to St. James.
Yes, they are playing very good and are trying to get them their first state championship. St. James has yet to win a state championship, and they are on their way to do that right now. That happening down at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. We'll get to some more high school football because we had the 7A state championship last night, and boy, was it a Thompson just came out and did really what Thompson likes to do and dominate the game behind their 8th grade quarterback, who we'll talk about a little bit later on. But boy, he showed the state and really the country that they need to watch out for him moving forward.
Yeah, he's just been phenomenal. Trent Seaborn is his name, and there's some ties to Tua Tagovailoa and that family. Of course, that they have ties to Thompson with Talia going to Thompson High School. And it's one of those situations to where you when you see young talent. Jack Hayes of Piedmont's a perfect example of this. He was a freshman, one of the key contributors on the football team just a few years ago, and turned out to become statistically the greatest player to ever play high school football. Trent Seaborn has put himself on a map that I don't know if we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
An eighth grader doing what he's doing is sensational. And I was able to listen to a lot of his press conference after the game. And if you just put blinders on, all you heard was audio, you would have thought that this was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Just how mature he is. His stat line was phenomenal as well. He won the MVP and then gave the MVP to a senior that he had bonded with over the course of the season, Corbin Williams. And Williams was the guy that had the block punt against Auburn 2 years ago that helped the catalyst for that comeback. And he talked, and the young Seaborn talked about how, hey, if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have the stats that I have. Just the maturity that he has at that young age, it's incredible. He's going to be fun to watch for a long time. He came from Colorado over to Alabama, and looks like he's going to be a charm.
8th grader. goes to middle school.
Yeah.
And he's out there slinging the ball across the field.
Not to mention, he's a part of the middle school band, believe it or not. I forgot what instrument he plays. I think he plays saxophone or French horn. I'll go back and look, but I know he plays one of the horned instruments. And yeah, he's a member of the band in 8th grade. But of course, I think he dresses and eats with the 9th graders. I was listening to Coach Mark Freeman talk about him after the game. He said he goes last all the time. He's like a servant leader, even though he's with the 9th graders a year ahead of him. He acts like the leader of them. And yesterday he was a leader of a team that won its 4th straight 7A championship.
Unbelievable what Thompson was able to do. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. I want to get to some college football news, though, as it's official. We're going to have a 12-team playoff in 2024. Now, we've been waiting on the Rose Bowl. Believe it or not, the Rose Bowl has been holding everything up.
Yeah.
You got to play at 5 o'clock so you can have the sunset across the San Gabriel Mountains.
Cue the eye roll.
But the Rose Bowl has finally come around and got off their high horse, and we get to have a 12-team playoff.
High horse being the operative words here. And I think that this was going to be the result. The committee of the Rose Bowl knew that this was the best thing for college football. And I don't know where we got to a point where the college football is bending the knee to the Rose Bowl, but I'm glad everything worked out. That game deserves to be in the rotation. That game deserves to be one of the top games in the entire country, and so I'm glad that the Rose Bowl committee, was able to sign off on that. So officially, we will have a deal. I think it's one of those things, and I'm going to press this story forward a little bit. The talks are 2024 is the start of all of this. We have the infrastructure to host the World Cup right now. Let's just say for some reason Qatar just couldn't host it. We could literally fly everybody here right now and host the World Cup right now with the infrastructure we have in this country. We have the infrastructure right now to host a 12-team playoff right now. I understand TV deals and there's a lot of money that needs to get litigated and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand 2024. Let's just do it 2023.
I completely agree with you. I see no reason why you can't do that. Hey, let's just go ahead and expand it now.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
This is a perfect year to do it. Brent Beard will join us at 3 o'clock and talk more about this. He actually sent me a text about 9:30 last night, which is 10:30 his time. And he said, it's finally happened. We got a 12-team playoff. He was excited. I guess texting everybody he knows. He was excited. I guess texting everybody he knows. But I know for college football, this is good.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, maybe last year, we started hearing the talks of, hey, this could expand. What's it going to be? 8, 12. Do you think 12 is the right place to go first? And some people said, well, let's try 6 or let's try 8.
Right.
Now, I think 12 is a good place to go.
Yeah, 12 to me is a beautiful number. At 12, you still give the incentive to get one of those first 4 spots so you can get a first round bye. That's the reason why I didn't like 16. Because at 16, 1 and 16, the first seed and the 16th seed have to win the same amount of games for a championship.
Yeah.
I do like some incentive giving 1 through 4 the incentive of the bye week, just like they do with the FCS. And the FCS playoff is a little bit bigger, but I think at this stage in college football, 12 is perfect.
Yeah, I think so too. And so that will begin in 2024. Hopefully earlier, but we will have the 12-team playoff thanks to the Rose Bowl. And they have agreed to play it at another time, another day. Believe it or not, you can play the Rose Bowl not on January 1st.
Being married to tradition is one thing. Being married to a tradition that's now obsolete is completely different. I mean, at this point, I'm not saying nobody cares about the Rose Bowl because you have your Pac-12 people, your Big Ten people who will always love that game. And I'm not trying to be myopic in my thought that the SEC country rules, but after what happened with the 12-team or the 14 playoff, actually what happened during the BCS roll-around, you just stopped caring about the Rose Bowl as much as you did before. So I get holding on to the traditions of yesteryear, but I'm glad that they're both on board and back.
And something interesting about the Rose Bowl that I found out the other day, just in reading and listening to some things, the people who control the Rose Bowl is the Rose Bowl Parade Committee. Mm-hmm. So it's not football people. It's the Rose Bowl Parade people who are making these decisions and controlling the Rose Bowl. I think that's kind of why we've had this delay is these are not people who have college football in their best interest, but this tradition of the parade in the Rose Bowl.
Right. And I'm going to preface what I'm going to say before it sounds harsh with this. So I went to Homewood High School. We had a great band. And every year they were invited to do something big. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and the Rose Bowl Parade. When I was in high school, they all went. I wasn't a member of the band, but they all got to go. The Rose Bowl Parade is awesome. It's a great TV product, and it's great for the kids there. But yes, the parade should not be dictating what we do at the football game. Yeah. And I understand it's a part of that day. It's a part of that tradition. But it's one of those things where, as college football literally now expands, as the money expands, as the popularity expands, we got to think bigger here. We got to think bigger than one day, one parade, one time, as prestigious as the Rose Bowl parade is.
I would love to go to a game in the Rose Bowl. That's like a bucket list item for me, is to go to a game in the Rose Bowl. But glad they've came around. Glad we're going to be able to have this 12-team playoff, and it's good for college football that we will be having this starting in 2024. More,
And also, I don't know if you saw through of how it will take place, where the first round of the playoff in 2024 will take place that final week of December. December 21st is the first one, and then we have designated school sites. So about what we thought, when this idea was tossed around. So number 12 will play at number 5, number 11 at number 6, number 10 at number 7, and then 8 and 9 get together, and then of course 1 through 4 all get the first round bye. So what I love about the playoff is that you don't have this crazy massive gap between the championship week and when the playoffs start. Championship week this week, December 3rd, the first week of December, and then literally just a couple of weeks later is the first round of the playoff. Yeah. So you get going, in my opinion, a lot earlier, which I've always thought is better for college football than the lengthy wait.
It's going to be interesting how they decide to do ticket sales. I think, like, let's say you have season tickets to Alabama games,
right? And
Alabama has a home game in this first round. Are you going to have to buy a whole new tickets, or are you going to get your season tickets going to work?
I think that they would do season tickets working, but then here is the thing. Does everybody have to fall through the same thing? Does Colorado have to do it too, just in case they host one? Yeah. Does Colorado State have to do it? Or I don't know. I'm picking on the Colorado schools right now. Do the Florida schools have to do it? So I think every school will have its own kind of merited system where, hey, you buy a season ticket package. You also can buy a insurance package that covers us just in case we go to the playoff. And if not, it may roll over to another sport or roll over to the next season or something like that.
Yeah. So lots to work out, but some cool stuff coming with this playoff expansion. Again, Brent Beard will join us at 3 o'clock. We'll talk more college football. At 3:30, Roger Hoovel will join us. We'll talk some Crimson Tide hoops with Roger. Coming up next, though, we'll talk more high school football as St. James has won the Class 3A state championship over the Piedmont Bulldogs. We'll talk about that and more coming up next.
Steve.
It is WKXX Live here on Fox Sports 102.9. Chase and Gerhard making our way through this Thursday. State championships rolling in high school football. We mentioned Thompson getting a win last night. St. James just now getting the win over Piedmont. To add to our guest lineup, just got the confirmation, Tommy Wood of the AHSA Radio Network, who was just on the call. This Piedmont game is going to join us at 2:45.
Awesome.
To recap that game, we'll talk, of course, Thompson with him as well. But you got to be impressed with what St. James strung together in the second half. Piedmont had the lead at halftime, but St. James under KJ Jackson, who was 10 for 15, 351 yards, and 5 touchdowns on the day. 67% completion percentage there. Unbelievable day for KJ Jackson.
Especially in the second half. He had touchdowns on passes of 21 yards, 48 yards, 43 yards, and another huge play, one that went 99. He was incredible today, or 93, I should say. He was sensational, and Piedmont couldn't counter with the offense of their own, especially in the second half. Jack Hayes was sensational with 214 yards himself, but when you have the kind of passing day that KJ Jackson does, and then he was able to go several different receivers. Ethan Beard had a great game, 4 catches, 194 yards.
Wow.
Not on 10 catches, not on 12, not on 8, on 4. 194 yards, almost 100 spot for Clint Hauser as well. I mean, this team was just phenomenal offensively, especially in the second half, outscoring Piedmont 35-8 total in the second half, and run away with this one. It was a dominating performance, that's for sure.
Yeah, and again, like we mentioned, the first state championship for the Trojans of St. James, but very, very impressive there for St. James. We mentioned last night the 7A state championship as the Thompson Warriors 49, Auburn 24. As we mentioned, these two coaches have been there, done that. Thompson, of course, has been in the state championship for a number of years. Keith Etheridge has won multiple state championships in his career, his first time with the Auburn Tigers last night. But it was all Thompson from the start. And we mentioned Trent Seaboard, 12 for 14 last night, 207 yards, 5 touchdowns. The 8th grader, really the star of last night's game.
I think one of the big things that we took away was Thompson is still Thompson, and now they've added a wrinkle where they have another kid that could be, that sensational, super sensational. We just hope he stays around, and I hope he does too. But for him to have, as we talked about in the previous segment, for him to have the maturity that he does, just the intestinal fortitude to be able to lead a team. I mean, not just any team, because you and I talked off the air. Having an 8th grade starting quarterback would be rare for a 1A team that has to pick and choose between a very small pool of players in grades 9 through 12. Grades 9 through 12 on the 7A level, for the most part, you have 2, 3, maybe even 4 kids that could play quarterback. For them to have to go all the way to 8th grade, and then for him to perform the way he has throughout the season, number one, and then on the biggest stage last night, it's unreal. And obviously, we just hope that he can continue his progression and continue being just the dynamite talent that he is.
Yes, and they are handing out the awards for 3A. No surprise, KJ Jackson, the MVP of Class 3A, as they hand off the trophy to Jimmy Perry, the head coach of St. James, for the team to celebrate there. But 2 state champions have been crowned in high school football. Thompson last night, and we had St. James here earlier today as well. I believe 1A is next.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And so that one will be coming up probably in 40 minutes or so, around 3 o'clock. But Jordan Hare Stadium, the place for high school football fans to go.
The place, Auburn, right now seems like the epicenter of sports this past week with the announcement of Hugh Freeze, the flag football championships where Auburn High School won. And then, of course, Auburn High School was also in the state championship game that Thompson won as well. But, yeah, the the sports hub this entire week has been down there on the plains, and congratulations to our 3 champions so far. We haven't had any close games just yet. The flag football game was a blowout by Auburn yesterday. Thompson blowing out the Auburn Tigers, and then today St. James, especially in the second half, getting the best of Piedmont. But yeah, 1A comes next, and then 5A tonight, and then with the even numbers tomorrow with 4A. And then 2A and 6A closes this out.
So the Cherokee County Warriors will be up tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. as they'll take on Andalusia. But another school in the state of Alabama on the college level is getting some attention this week, and it's the UAB Blazers. We talked about this yesterday. They made it official yesterday afternoon in a presser that Trent Dilfer is the new head coach of the Blazers. We talked about how surprising of a hire this was. Steve Irvine, 1819news.com, joined us yesterday, and he told us that Trent Dilfer is going to probably win this press conference and win over some Blazers yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, and he was prophetic when he said it, when he talked about it, because he certainly did. And Trent Dilfer obviously has the cachet as a player. He's been through media training, and then he was a broadcaster, so he just knows what to say. But it doesn't come across as fake. That's the big thing with Dilfer. It comes across as authentic and as real as possible. And the fact that he was able to do it. Now, people will say, not everybody, I think people will say, and people might try to say, hey, it is high school football. I think that he understands, what this college game is. And I think he's had enough of a go-between from his playing days to his coaching days, enough of a go-between from the high school game to the college game, that he'll be able to just get people, to help him out in ways that are really helpful for him.
We want to give you the chance now to hear Trent Dilfer in his opening statement from yesterday's press conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Watts. Thank you, Mark. Thank you to the search committee, the board of trustees, so many people that are entrusting me with a very, very big thing. 8 weeks ago, my beautiful wife, Cassandra, who you all get to know, and I were sitting there watching our evening TV show after practice was over. And this conversation around going to the NFL or going to college football has kind of been a topic of conversation for years now. And I looked at her and I said, I think we're staying here. I think we found our thing. We're high school football coaches, and we're changing people's lives, and we feel great about doing it. And she looked at me and she said, that's true. She goes, but I want you to rethink that. She goes, you were made for something more, and you've done what you can do with where we're at, and I want you to stretch yourself and start listening. It was shortly after that Mark and I connected, and this journey started. And I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't use the word scared. I was skeptical, because I am a high school football coach, and I'm not ashamed of that. But as I started going down this process, and my visionary instincts started taking over, and my incitement, enthusiasm started overwhelming me, I was like, oh my gosh, there's something big out there to do. I like big climbs. I wish I was a better athlete these days. I'd be a mountain climber, because I like looking up at the top of the peak and people saying there's no way you're getting up there, and I would say, let me show you. And that's what we're going to do here at UAB. Everybody can stand up and say, every coach that gets hired in this cycle is going to say the same things. They're going to have the same narratives. They're going to have the same promises. They're going to talk about these giant pie in the sky things that they're going to do in their programs. And then what's going to happen is they're going to get with their teams, and they're going to be so consumed with trying to do what they promised to do that they're going to fail the people that they would do it with. And that's the player. The one thing you'll learn about me is I'm 100% player-centric. It is about the student athlete. The more you invest in the student athlete, the more you love the student athlete, the more you cry with the student athlete, the more you empathize with the student athlete, the more you get dirty with the student athlete and realize these are human beings going through a really tough stage of their life, and they need people to come around them and love them and support them and help them grow. Or guess what? That starts happening, And the overflow of that becomes unbelievable performance in the things they're passionate about. See, I'm a contrarian. I told the team this a few minutes ago. I said, right now in football, many people say you have to make a choice. You have to be great at football, and you're going to sacrifice some other things. Or you can be great at development, and then you'll sacrifice wins and losses. I think they're wrong. I believe you can be elite in both. In fact, I think they mirror each other. I think the more you pour into a student athlete, the more you pour into a coach, the more you have professional standards for them off the field, the more that translates onto the field. And yes, we will have professional standards. I don't have a lot of rules. I have very high standards. We will leave places better than we found them. That's not just rooms, that's environments. When our student athletes leave a place, the place will leave better because the energy, the enthusiasm, the effort that they'll exert when they're there. We will serve like you've never seen a group of people serve. Because when you learn to serve one another, you trust one another. When you learn to give and not take, you become closer. These are principles that the greatest coaches of all time have used. They've just been washed away through these narratives of winning overall. Please understand me, it's a hard journey. Like I said, it's a giant mountain. But I think the college football playoff is something we should talk about. But you talk about the college football playoff, we're talking about cleaning your locker and making your bed and going to class and participating in class and doing great homework. When you're asked to write an essay, write a great essay. By learning how to get up in front of a group of people and speak. By running every sprint 2 yards past the finish line. By running to the ball every single time it's snapped. By over-communicating. By when your buddy needs a ride, you jump out of bed and you go get him. When your teammate's hurting, you put your arm around him and say, buddy, what can I do for you? That gets us to the college football playoff. Recruiting's a huge part of it. We will learn to recruit at an elite level. I'd be lying to tell you if I knew how to recruit at an elite level. That would be crap. That would be a lie, right? Never done it. But we're about to get really good at it. I'll hire people that have been great at it in the past. But recruiting to me is a different narrative. Recruiting to me is connecting. We'll connect with our current student athletes on our roster now in a way that will help them feel and trust us at an early age. They're losing a man they truly, truly believe in. Talking to those players today, you could see the pain in their eyes. They love Coach Vincent. They love that staff. And I said, I want to honor that. I want to help them finish strong. But I also hope to earn their trust as we go through this together because great things are coming. So we'll connect with our current roster and we'll recruit them. We'll recruit and connect with great people, the donor base, coaches, and then we'll get on the road and we'll connect at a deep level with the high school coaches in the Southeast. I've already had many of them reach out to me today, Coach Freeman, Coach Kelly, and others, and they want to give me the line. I said, Coach, I will get down there and we're going to connect and we're going to break bread, and I wanted to get to know everything about you and your program. The player aspect will come later. We're going to be authentic. We're going to be truth tellers in these young men's lives, and we're going to love them beyond the way they've been loved before by coaches. I probably should have written down notes because I can go. My wife's laughing because she's going, uh-oh, he's getting going here. I want to open up for some questions because we can go a lot of different directions. This promise I will make. I'll make very few promises, but this promise I will make. You will get the best of me. You'll get the best of a 42-year-old football life that's had some of the greatest people in the game influence them. None more than my dad, who's sitting right there, who started me on this football journey on the back of a blocking sled. But I've been shaped by some of the greatest football minds that have ever coached. And you will get the very best of me. I will be relentless in my work ethic. I will be passionate about what I do. I will love and serve this campus with everything that I have. My family will be completely invested, and you'll get the very best. The net of that, I believe, will be an era of UAB football that many couldn't possibly imagine. I said the same things when I took this little high school job in Middle Tennessee, and people thought I was crazy. Tomorrow, we're about to do something pretty special. I hope you follow it. It should be on TV. Once that thing's over, I'm yours. and you'll get the very best of me. Thank you very much.
I'm ready to run through a wall and suit up in a UAB Blazer uniform.
He's dynamite, and we've talked about this before with Trent Dilfer. Obviously, being a quarterback, you have to know how to deal with the media. He's done it since he was a player, from high school to college to the pros. So he understands that dynamic of it. But now he understands it from the coaching dynamic of it, because he had to do it from the high school level. But then he also has daughters, so he understands that all sports are important. So I think he'll try to put his arms around UAB basketball and volleyball and softball and baseball. He brings everything that you need, and then he's got the hardware to show for it, because he's won a Super Bowl before. He's played with Ray Lewis. He's had roundtable sessions alongside Bill Billick and Bill Belichick and Jimmy Johnson and all these guys. So he knows the motivation factor of it. I'm right there with you. I think there'll be some people who doubt the small things, the recruiting part of it, but I think he can work around that with his knowledge of the game. And outside of that, I'm ready to run through a wall for him too. Like he knows what to do to get the best out of his players. And in a day like today, when his team could have quit on him, you can tell they didn't. So it was one of those perfect situations, and I think UAB hit a home run.
Yep, they are, I believe, AA state champs up in Tennessee.
Yep. Won the. Yeah, they do it a little different from us, but yeah, Division II AA Blue Cross Bowl over at Finley Stadium.
All right, so he's a state champion now, looking to lead the UAB Blazers. He definitely won that press conference. He won me over.
Yeah,
for sure. You got to imagine that he's got some good connections that will help on his staff. You mentioned the recruiting side of things. I think, first of all, his name will help recruit, especially offensive players.
Right.
And then I think he can put together a really good staff using the folks that he knows. That could really help him recruiting as well.
Yeah, for certain. And I think quarterback is a little bit different, because those guys live in their own kind of bubble, and you kind of have to, because as a quarterback here, nobody else knows what you're going through. There's one of those guys on the field, and it's kind of an insulated world. It's like pitchers usually. And he can call up any guy that's been to the Elite 11, and in the last 10 years or so, he's been doing it. That's everybody from Tua to Jameis Winston. Now, these guys are in the pros now, these guys that have been recruited. And then he also brought up something that I thought was really intellectual as he went into it. He now is at a program at Lipscomb Academy where they didn't have that many high school recruits when he first got there. Well, they have a bunch now. And I think he said about 20-something guys have offers. Well, he hears all their stories about recruiting. He understands, hey, this works because it worked with my kid. This doesn't work because it didn't work with my kid. And he understands that dynamic now, being on the other side of the ledger, so to speak.
Just looking at the schedule, the 2023 schedule for the UAB Blazers. If I can get it to pull up here. They start off with North Carolina A&T. They do have the Georgia Bulldogs on the schedule this year. But moving to a new conference, of course, comes with some change of teams and everything. But, I think it's set up for them to be successful. There's going to be excitement around the program, obviously, with Trent Dilfer coming in. So I think there's a lot to be excited about at UAB. And for certain there is it's kind of a new era going into the American Conference.
Yeah, most certainly. And I know that I don't know if the conference has completely announced its full schedule yet, because of the round table of teams that are coming in and leaving. But a lot of those teams will still be familiar to UAB. Teams like FAU, teams like North Texas, teams like Rice will still be familiar with UAB. Charlotte, I know, also in there. UTSA, another team that is leaving with them to go from Conference USA over to the American Conference. And so, yeah, well, it'll be a great season. I think that obviously fans will be keeping up with Auburn in their first year under Hugh Freeze. I think a lot of people will still be keeping up with Alabama. How do they do post Bryce Young and Will Anderson? I think a lot of attention will go to UAB as well. Not to mention Troy, who just won the regular season and could now win a Sun Belt championship. Not to mention South Alabama, who won 10 games this year. Not to mention Jacksonville State, who's now going FBS and who won a bunch of games this year. Football in this state will be great, and I think Trent Dilfer adds to that.
Brandon Marcello, national sports writer, 24/7 Sports, said yesterday, he said, listen to this lineup of college football coaches in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
Nick Saban, Hugh Freeze, Trent Dilfer, Rich Rodriguez, John Sumrall, and Kane Womack.
Yeah.
What a lineup of coaches here in this state.
The greatest of all time, the greatest to ever do it, one of the best modern coaches in Hugh Freeze and Rich Rodriguez, a guy that both those guys have kind of reformulated the way we think about offensive football. And then newcomers to get really excited about, a guy like Trent Dilfer, and then the up-and-coming guys like Kane Womack and John Sumrall, who will, in my opinion, be Power 5 coaches not that long from now, or maybe even not have to go Power 5 because what we talked about in our first segment, the college football playoff is expanding, which will give these teams legitimate chances to win championships.
Yeah, and I think that is a solid lineup there of coaches. John Sumrall today was named the Sun Belt Coach of the Year. Kane Womack got an extension down at South Alabama today. He'll be making $810,000 a year now. And football here in the state of Alabama is very exciting right now, and Trent Dilfer just adds to that.
Yeah, we've already got great high school football, and I think the college football coaching is just outstanding, and it adds to that. And this is not to mention, we don't know who the new coach at UNA will be, but given the trajectory of what we've seen so far with coaches being hired in the state collegiately, I won't be a bit surprised if that's another home run for the Lions.
Oh, for sure. And so exciting times here, but exciting times for UAB. And Birmingham is such a cool place, and I think that he can really get that city rallying around this UAB football program. Bill Clark did a great job of doing that. They've moved right there into downtown. I think when they were out at Legion Field, there was kind of a separation between Birmingham and UAB. But I think now that they're right there in downtown, they're going to have a big name head coach. I think that place is going to be rocking on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, you could feel and sense the energy in Birmingham getting behind their athletics, both at UAB and with the Birmingham Barons, being able to build that infrastructure right around the city of Birmingham to help support the team. One of the great points Steve Irvine made yesterday was about, if there is maybe some pause about Trent Dilfer, it would be this feels like the end of the return. Well, Trent Dilfer made it sound like, oh, no. It's a continuation of what Bill Clark's already started. Yeah. It's not, in most places when you take over for a guy, it's, hey, you try to separate your culture from what they just had without being disrespectful to the past.
Yeah.
In Trent Dilfer's case, it's the complete opposite. It's let's hug the past and let's build on that. And that's the only way to do it because UAB's been built on a strong foundation since they've returned.
It has. And, this will be a continuation of the success that the Blazers have had there with their football program, as it has really risen to the top of Group of 5 football. We've got a lot to get to on the show. Tommy Wood, AHSAA Radio Network, is going to join us next, talk some high school football that he has seen down at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. We will do that on the other side.
The Press Box.
It is a Thursday afternoon as we roll on Fox Sports 102.9. Chase Robinson here, Gerhard Mathangani alongside as well. We've seen two of the high school football state championships here in the state of Alabama as Thompson gets the win in Class 7A and St. James just beating Piedmont in Class 3A to take home that blue map. Tommy Wood with the AHSAA Radio Network is joining us. He was just on the call of the Piedmont St. James game. Tommy, appreciate you coming on with us.
Hey, man, and appreciate you asking me to be with you.
Well, it was Piedmont looking good in the first half, but my goodness, at St. James in the second half behind their quarterback, KJ Jackson. What a performance from him to lead to their first state championship.
You know, I'd heard a lot of talk about KJ Jackson, and actually I showed up this morning at the same time that St. James team did. So as they were going through their, I guess Trojan walk would be what it would be called for them, and I actually walked in next to him, and it was like celebrity status when he walked through the crowd. And first half he was good, and I was thinking, okay, well, he's not a bad quarterback, but man, in the second half, this guy turns it on, and you see why all the scouts are oohing and ahhing, talking to this guy, because I tell you, he is going to be a hot commodity in a couple of years. He's only a junior, and he really made a believer out of me today.
No doubt. Tommy, Gerhard here. One of the things I found really interesting, especially in the second half, was the number of big plays made by St. James. What do you think changed for the Trojans there in the second half?
They gave him a little more time, but I think the biggest thing is the more time he had, there was no way that the secondary for Piedmont could cover that long. And these receivers that they had just incredible speed. And because there was no pressure on Jackson, he was able to sit back there and give his receivers a little longer to get open, and that led to the big plays. And, man, it just seemed like after that everybody got open deep, and he put it on the money. And it was just an amazing performance in the second half. But I'll say this. You look at St. James, they had a lot of speed on that team, and their skill people were probably some of the fastest I've seen in a while.
Yes, for sure. A lot of speed on the Trojans team. As far as Piedmont goes, we've seen a great career from Jack Hayes, Piedmont's quarterback, and we saw him really trying to lead a comeback there in that second half to try to get another state championship for his team. Talk about what you saw from Piedmont, specifically their quarterback, Jack Hayes.
Man, I tell you, it's been a pleasure of mine just to actually get to broadcast his game over the last 4 years, because this guy, when you look at high school football and you look for a guy that's a true winner, I think Jack Hayes could be your statue for that, because, this guy, he is just an amazing warrior, and he gets after it. I was talking to some of the guys a few minutes ago from St. James, and they said, hey, we had no answer for him. That is the most physical runner we've seen, and we're talking running back, quarterback, whatever. And they said, we made the reference, he's the Tim Tebow of high school football in Alabama, and I really believe that, because he has really changed the way that people look at a quarterback when you talk about the guy from Piedmont, just so physical. I said during the broadcast today, he's the kind of player that, hey, if I need 3 yards, I can guarantee you he's going to try to give me 4. So he has just been a pleasure for me to watch for the last 4 years. An outstanding athlete, and just so resilient on the field. And I tell you, he's just been fun to watch.
No doubt about it. And the fact that he's been able to make plays on defense in state championship games as well as on offense has been completely sensational. Talk a little bit about the job that Steve Smith has done with this football team and this little group here who's been talked about for a while to be able to get back to another state championship. I know you keep up with Piedmont relatively closely throughout the course of the season. And in these last few years, what do you make so far of what we've been able to see with Piedmont, especially with this class of 2023 who've been a really integral part of Piedmont's success?
Well, you talk about Steve Smith, and you talk about one of the greatest that's ever walked on the sidelines here in the state of Alabama. I mean, he's a certain Hall of Famer. Just the way that he conducts himself, and he gets so much out of those players. And he's one of those players to me that you can always have those great players, and you can ride those guys. But he's one of those that takes the good and makes them great. He's the guy that takes the ones that are average and makes them good and makes them contribute during the ball game. And to me, he's also a class act, and I like the way that he runs his program. I like the way that he conducts himself. And to me, it's just the way he has done that. He's just going to be one of the most respected coaches in the state of Alabama.
We're talking with Tommy Wood of the AHSAA Radio Network. I know you were there last night as well as Thompson defeated Auburn High School. And once again, we talked about the quarterback for St. James. Well, it was another quarterback last night in Seaborn for Thompson that was able to get it done. The 8th grader throwing for 5 touchdowns.
You know, in 8th grade, I don't know that I could have done that on Madden or any video game. And this guy's out here doing it against 18-year-old guys. And, you know, it's funny because I made the comment when he's got his helmet on, you know, you're sitting there and you're like, well, he doesn't look like an 8th grader. When he takes his helmet off, you go, he is truly an 8th grader. So I really was just amazed at what he did last night. So I've been able to gather some information here, you know, since then. From what I understand, this guy, if you want to see his true talent, you should see his painting and artwork. They say this guy can paint. He could be a guy that would sell his paintings. He's so talented. Also, I think he plays a couple of musical instruments. He's an AP student. And so I don't know. I don't know if you can dial up a better story for a young man, but everything I've seen has been so impressive. And, you know, not to be looked aside, but I'm going to tell you, this guy wins the MVP trophy, walks immediately over to the wide receiver, hands it to him, and never blinks. Just hands it to him, walks away, and said, hey, it's yours. Just gave the MVP trophy away to the receiver that had 4 touchdowns last night. So he's a class act, and I think that's going to be a fun thing to watch. And, you know, we said this morning in one of our meetings, I think this is going to be a guy that in 4 years you're sitting there going, okay, the most highly sought-after quarterback in the state of Alabama, or actually in the United States, because I think he is going to be highly touted, and he's going to have his choice of wherever he wants to go.
No doubt about it. I mean, I'd heard about the music thing. I did not know about the painting thing. I feel like when Guy was handing out talent, he just accidentally spilled the bucket on Seaborn when he was born, because goodness.
And evidently he took mine too, so I don't know. I mean, you know, I've been trying to find my talent for 54 years, so, you know, he must have got my share.
Exactly. Expanding further from Seaborn, what do you make of this Thompson football team? A lot of doubters at the beginning of the season when they lost to Thompson, and then they lost to Lipscomb Academy with the then future, now current UAB head coach Trent Dilfer, and then what they were able to do to turn it around. We talked about Steve Smith for a while, and you have to give a lot of props to Mark Freeman, who's done yet another phenomenal job with that football team.
You know, keep in mind, I grew up in Clay County, and so I'm sitting here and I always say you cannot overemphasize how much winning tradition really means to a team. And it's one of those things that you saw Thompson get off to a slow start. And, you know, I had some friends of mine call that were from Alabaster, and they're like, well, everybody's going to get us this year. We're in trouble. And I said, no, you're still Thompson. And that's the thing about it is those guys still know how to win. And once they get things figured out, and that's how you've seen the maturity of Seaborn, you've seen the way this team has progressed throughout the season, and they're probably, you know, playing as well as anybody in the 7A classification here at the end of the year, as we've seen in the last several years. So they've lived up to that Thompson standard.
They sure have, as Thompson and St. James have been the champions so far. And I know you were on call of the flag football championship yesterday as well. Auburn defeating Oxford there in that one.
Yeah, that was fun. It's something I've never done. You know, guys, I've been broadcasting. My first play-by-play game was in 1989, and so I've done a lot of games back in the day, and I've done a lot of fathers, and then I've come back and done their sons' games later on. But that was the first time I've ever done a father's game years ago, and I did his daughter's game in the championship game yesterday. So that was a lot of fun, and that is a fun sport. I'm going to tell you, I'm all behind it. I think it's a great opportunity for these young ladies. I think that if you go and watch it and you're not entertained, then something's wrong with you, because those girls get after it. They are fun. They're athletic. They get after they make it, them ways them down the field. And again, it is so much fun to watch.
Tommy Wood of the HSAA Radio Network. You can hear him call some state championship action this week there at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. Tommy, appreciate you taking some time hopping on with us this afternoon, and enjoy some of those high school football games.
Hey, always a pleasure to work with you guys, and I appreciate you having me on, and continue to do a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Tommy Wood, the HSAA Radio Network here on WKXX Live. We're going to jump to a break here as Brent Beard will join us on the other side, talk some college football. Next, here on this December the 1st, Thursday afternoon on Fox Sports 102.9. The WK
These guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Hour number 2 on this Thursday afternoon, December the 1st. We'll flip over the calendar into the month of December. Hope you're having a great Thursday so far. We have hit on a lot today, a lot of college football talk. We're going to continue that now as we welcome on Brent Beard down from Jacksonville, Florida. First Coast News covers college football there. The Second Helping podcast. He's a Heisman voter. Has been covering college football for many years. Brent, always great to talk with you. I know an exciting day in college football as we'll be having a 12-team playoff here in a couple of years.
Well, look, it's revolutionary, in my opinion, that it's going to change the game that much because we're going to get so many more teams and people involved and fan bases. We've got, guys, 4 to 6 to 7 involved right now with bated breath hanging on for Sunday. With this new development, we're going to have probably, I would say 20 to 25 that's going to be involved in. I can't wait. I'm very grateful it's only 2 years away.
Absolutely. Brett, I'm going to do a hypothetical with you. Let's just say the 12-team playoff was today. Who do you like so far, and do you see any maybe any teams that would not be in today's format being able to hold that championship trophy at the end of the year?
Well, I tell you, you've got a lot of these undefeated teams. Would a TCU be able to last and hold up in the spotlight as we have seen? I don't know. I think also, would Michigan still be able to run the way they are now? That's a really good question as far as where it may. And I'll throw this out. What about a Florida State that's just kind of on the cusp at this point? I believe they're 13. The way they're playing and the way that they are able to run the ball at this point, would you want to play Florida State if you're the opposition?
No, I wouldn't right now.
Not at all.
Yeah. So
well,
go ahead.
And look. I don't know if there's a more improved team right now. Not because they're 2.5 hours away from us, but what Mike Norvell has done, frankly, has been tremendous.
It really has, because I think back to last year, and our team here in our backyard, Jacksonville State, goes down to Florida State, beats them last year. People talking about Norvell being on the hot seat. So yeah, what he's been able to do is been remarkable.
Well, it has, and look, I think they've kind of reached a point where they are very capable of some continuing improvement. If Jordan Travis comes back, I think that's going to be huge for them. Also, and listen, what about a team like Utah that I saw against Florida at the beginning of the year? They're very physical. They've got a really good quarterback. I'm an exceptional coach. Look, they could beat USC and win that Pac-12. So yeah, I think there's all kinds of interesting scenarios if we had a 12-team playoff right now.
For sure. Do you like the format? The format that's been somewhat laid out. We've known about it for a while. We've kind of thought around the parameters of it, but the fact that it will be the top 4 seeds will have to be conference champions. So a school like Notre Dame, who's not in a conference officially, won't be able to get in. Do you like the format of all of it? Considering all the factors involved.
I think so. We'll have to see with some of it. I mean, the first round on the 3rd week of December is exciting. The quarters, as many of these games as you can get on New Year's Day, I think is a good thing too. And guys, did you notice we're talking about in 24 and 25 the national championship game being January 19th and January 20th. So the way I look at that is that's just that's about 10 more days of college football than we normally would have.
Yes, and that in itself is very exciting for those of us who just love watching college football, whatever it is. We're talking with Brent Beard, talking some college football this afternoon. As far as the playoff goes this year, of course, conference championships this weekend, things could change. Do you like the way the committee seeded them on Tuesday night? Of course, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC, Ohio State, Alabama. Do you like the order?
Yeah. I mean, Georgia certainly has been the most consistent. Michigan's there because of the big win over Ohio State. TCU has earned their way. I mean, they've been incredible, frankly, as many close games as they have won. USC's kind of the flavor of the month right now. We'll see if that continues again with Utah. And then you've got, if something happens, you've got what might be even almost a coin flip between Ohio State and Alabama as to who would get in. I know Bama's got the two losses, Ohio State won, but Bama's played a tougher schedule. And again, guys, what you don't know is how this committee would treat a contest between Alabama and Ohio State, because I do know this. The committee really likes Alabama. That would certainly be in their favor, I think, with a healthier Bryce Young.
For sure. One of the big things I think going into this weekend is that we could have some teams lose. You could have a TCU lose this upcoming weekend. You could, maybe Michigan. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks Purdue's going to win that game. But let's just say that we do have some chaos this weekend. Do you expect to see any changes? And if so, what would we see as far as that relates to Alabama, maybe Ohio State, and then the two teams that are in right now with both USC and TCU?
It would. Georgia's going regardless. Michigan's going regardless. But now TCU is a possibility if they lost with only one loss. Again, it depends on how the committee would look at that. Now, if USC loses, they would be out. And then you would have, again, man alive, can you imagine Twitter on Saturday night if you've got, do you remember a few years ago that Ohio State Alabama debate on Twitter?
Yep.
I think it may be twice as fierce as it was then.
I completely agree with you. If that were to happen. Let's talk SEC championship because, Brent, I got to give you credit. You've been telling us since the beginning of the year. I remember SEC Media Days. You said LSU was going to be one of the top teams in the SEC, second in the West. Well, it turns out they're first in the West. They've got Georgia this Saturday. What have you make of this SEC championship game this year?
Well, I still think Georgia's going to win because they're the most consistent team of anybody and have been that way the entire season. I think what's interesting about this is, and I give LSU a lot of credit. They've had their share of injuries, but Brian Kelly can coach. And look, they'll be ready to play. I have no doubt about that, and I think they'll probably play well. Although I do think Georgia will be able to win the game. And look, Stetson Bennett deserves a lot of credit, and I've got a Heisman vote, and I think he's got to be considered for that vote too. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think he's got to be considered for that because, again, I use the word consistent, and where that has gone also for him too. So, but again, this LSU team's got their share of stars. Harold Perkins is just basically Will Anderson as a freshman is what it amounted to. And they've got backs like John Emery, who has played well. Also, now they do have a situation at quarterback because of injuries that people are going to be taking a real hard look at this point to kind of see where that's going and what and how that would affect the game. But again, I give LSU and Kelly a lot of credit because they probably won't be a stranger to the championship game. But Jaden Daniels' ankle injury, I think, will determine just how well that LSU's going to do. He's been in a boot this week. That's normal procedure. But if he is healthy, he could certainly cause the Dogs some problems.
Right. Brent, we haven't had a good chance to talk to you since the coaching carousel got rolling. Are there any developments over the last maybe 5 to 10 days that have surprised you? Some fits that you like? What in the college coaching landscape have you noticed? And maybe some things that make your ears perk.
Well, certainly Trent Dilfer at UAB.
Yeah.
I think is fascinating. Frankly, I don't think anybody thought that would happen. And you know, I think some of these guys actually staying or being promoted. Brent Key at Georgia Tech, I think is interesting. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin is a tremendous football coach, and I think he will do well. Frankly, in the Big Ten, Matt Rule is a good choice for Nebraska. We weren't surprised with Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I don't know how smooth that's going to be because what no one really is talking about is Auburn's roster next year is going to be basically turned over. And that roster right now is not real strong. That's just the truth of the matter. So Freeze has got a lot to deal with. But Freeze is also going to be under a lot of scrutiny, guys, with his past and concerned about his behavior off the field. I don't know if there'll be anyone under a microscope this coming season like Freeze is going to be.
Yeah, a good point there. We're talking with Brent Beard, talking some college football this afternoon. Which of these hires that have been made so far, which one would you say would be the A+ hire in college football?
I would say Fickell again at Wisconsin because he's just so good. I mean, look, if you can get Cincinnati in the playoffs, you can coach. I thought Fickell may buy this time and go to Ohio State, but he saw an opening and he jumped in there and was able to take advantage of it. I'm going to be interested to see where Dion goes if he leaves Jackson State. Would that be for Colorado or FAU? See, he needs to, before he goes to a upper echelon Division I school, he needs to go somewhere like who Lou Holt said, that I was at NC State, made all my mistakes there, and then I learned before I went to Notre Dame. So I think Dion could coach Division I ball one day, but he needs a school or two to be able to break in and to ease himself in a transition in order to do that.
No doubt. And transition is actually a word that I want to use as far as roster consideration goes. We've obviously seen the transfer portal get hot and heavy over the last 2 years. What team or what coach do you think will take the most advantage of this year's cycle now that all the coaches and all the programs have had about a year or two to kind of, be able to advance their roster? What coach, what team do you think will have the most success at that this cycle?
It starts Monday. I know Florida's pretty close to us. We're hearing that Anthony Richardson likely won't be back. Now you've got the awful news about Kitna, again, being accused of child pornography. So they're looking desperately for a quarterback. Jack Miller from Ohio State really never played much this year because he had thumb surgery. So that certainly is a school that desperately is going to be needing it too. I'm going to be curious. Will Alabama go into the portal and get a quarterback? I think with Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, those guys, if Bryce doesn't play in the bowl game, that will sort of give them a shot with it also. I don't think there's any doubt that Auburn's going to have to go deep into the portal and replace all the losses that they have had. But tell you what, it's going to be a very fascinating next few months for all these teams.
It sure is, and really all of college football. Brent Beard has spent a lot of time covering college football. And Brent, as always, we appreciate you coming on with us, talking some college football. We'll have to do it again real soon, but appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brent Beard on with us. And some news just coming out in the last hour or so. FAU has made their coaching hire, and that is with Tom Herman, former Texas coach, being hired with the Florida Atlantic Owls.
Yeah, a bit surprising there with that move, but Herman is obviously will be a name that's always associated with both Houston and with Texas, and now with FAU trying to take over that program. And FAU, of course, is one of the teams that we talked about when we talked about UAB. Another team is going from Conference USA to the American, and so we'll see if we'll see the kind of run that he can make over there. A lot of good coaches, a lot of good football right there in that conference right now.
Yep, and so that being announced today as well. We'll take a break here, come back, and Roger Hoover will join us at 3:30. We've got much more to get to here on this Thursday afternoon. continue on this Thursday afternoon. WKXX Live. Chase and Gerhard here with you. We let you in on some audio from Trent Dilfer earlier, his opening statement, but we're going to play some of the Q&A portion for you because, again, he won this press conference, and it was a lot of what he had to say, even answering these questions.
Yeah, no doubt. And I thought one of the biggest things, and I knew the reporters in Birmingham were going to do a great job, asking him some serious questions about him taking his first ever college football job. And he did a good job answering those questions and being able to talk about some of the specifics that he'll get into as the new head coach.
You came on campus. It's a football state. There's no secret about that. The facility's beautiful, brand new stadium. You look at schools like a Cincinnati that was in the college football pick. Mark and you were talking about it. Did you know from the outside about UAB? Did you know about Bill Clark? Did you know about the program being shut down? And what do you think? Does this have all the ingredients to be something really special that nationally people will say UAB football and think of not just you, but everyone else?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you led me that direction with Coach Clark and Coach Vincent. The foundation here is insanely solid. You mentioned some of it: facilities, investment, donor base. I would say this: the president. I always say this. I should have led with this. We said we would never do a college unless there was two things that were there: a president that was all about excellence, and a football AD that understood the impact of the game. Not that it's more important than any other sport. Please, I have 3 daughters that play Division I sports. Okay, so I don't think football is more important than anything. I think it's most impactful. I think it impacts a community, it impacts a city, it impacts a campus as much as anything. It's the front porch in many places. So I appreciate the two of them because they have the same core values that I have. What Coach Clark did here is incredible. I've known Bill. We were texting actually a few days ago. He had no idea this was going on. We were texting about a speaking engagement at one of his functions. I had a friend who walked on here. He trusted me with a friend's friend that walked on here and played here for a little while. His reputation is impeccable. And then Coach Vincent, what he's been able to do this year, despite some really difficult circumstances, has left this thing with such a strong foundation. I was telling the story, I think, to Mark or the committee. I'm like, think of, who's built a house here, right? If you've ever built a house, you lay the foundation and it's not real pretty, right? And then you start to get the framing up and the drywall goes up and you're like, okay, I start to see it. But it really doesn't feel like a home until you get the fancy appliances and you paint the walls the way you want them, and the interior decorator comes in, or the wife just goes and spends a lot of money on interior decorating. But like right here, you're walking into something that's a really pretty house. Like it's got a great foundation, a lasting foundation. It's solid. And all you're really doing is adding fancy upgrades to it to make it elite. So it's not a rebuild. It's not even a remodel. It's a beautification of something that's already pretty darn good looking.
My question to you is, for someone that played at the highest level, had a really good gig at ESPN for a long time, getting to be around some of the best players and coaches and traveling. It was a pretty good life. Why did you have the calling to coach, to take that high school job in Tennessee? And what is it about being a head football coach that really drawed you to this position?
We're going to get along well because you guys are filling in the gaps of all the things I forgot to say in the opening statement. I played golf 218 times in 2018. There's retirement, and then there's how I was retired. I was still getting paid by ESPN. Had kind of the golden parachute when I left. We'd moved to Austin, Texas. We basically chased our daughters around playing volleyball. And I was living the life. And I'd be lying to say it wasn't fun. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't fulfilling. And what we learned, and what I think my wife has seen in me, what my kids have seen in me, is I'm at my best when I'm climbing. I'm at my best when things are hard. I'm at my best when my back's against the wall. I'm at my best when things are chaotic. I'm at my best when people say I can't. And I wasn't at my best. I had gotten soft. In fact, I had become a hypocrite because I was not living the life that I had shared with so many young people around the country about what gets the best out of us. And I was called to this job in Nashville, and it was perfect because it made 0 sense. It made 0 sense to go take a place that had 38 kids, 6 lifted with a PVC pipe when I got there. The first lift when I got there, 6 of them were in the corner with a PVC pipe learning how to hang clean. So you had 32 guys that could lift a bar in the program. They were running out of bounds not to tackle the opponent in the first half. Our rival would give 400-plus yards rushing, and our kids were running out of bounds not to tackle a freshman running back. It gets better. 9 seniors didn't dress the year before on senior night, and none of them were hurt. So when I say it was a dust bowl, it was a dust bowl. It made no sense. I cried the first time I watched the film. I took the job, I didn't know what my salary was, and I had never watched the film. That's a calling. I cried when we watched the film because I looked at my offense coordinator, Trenton Kirkland, who now is at Vanderbilt, and I said, we're never getting a first down. Ever. We started recruiting the basketball team. We started having lunch with the teachers. We started meeting the moms. We started being honest with the people about what football is. My wife bought helmets for the entire team so they'd be safe and the moms would trust that football wasn't dangerous. And we just got dirty with their lives. We just became part of the community. The football was an overflow of it, because then they trusted us. And what I learned, to answer your question, this is what we call a Dilfer answer, a story of an answer. What I learned in that was my marriage was better. I was a better father. I was more compassionate. My friendships got better. I was a better version of me when things were hard. And it's been brutally hard. And I hope you understand this is going to be really hard and it's going to be really uncomfortable. There's only two things that will sit behind my desk, all these two signs behind my desk. One is at the edge of uncomfortable is where you find greatness, and the other one will say do hard things. We do enough hard things, we're uncomfortable enough, and we do it the right way, and greatness will flow from that. And that's what I've seen happen at the program I'm at, and that's what I'll see happen.
Trent Dilfer, their new UAB head coach. Again, just really cool stories from him. I mean, as he said, it made no sense for him to take that high school job. It was not in good shape. Look at where they are now.
Yeah, and I really love the dichotomy of he took a job where it's high school, it's bare bones, nothing. But then he realized the job he's taking now is the foundation set. So he's now living both lives. He's living the life of building a program, and he's living a life now of sustaining one.
We will talk with Roger Hoover, the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Coming up next, we'll talk some Tide Hoops on the other side.
The Press Box.
We'll continue on this Thursday afternoon. Fox Sports 102.9. Chase Robinson, Gerhard, Mathangani here with you as we welcome on our friend Roger Hoover, the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Roger, always great to talk with you. How are you today?
Doing great. How about you guys?
Doing good.
Excellent.
And I know you were up in Portland, Oregon. Good weekend for the 6-1 Tide. Alabama grabbing 2 of 3 up there at the Phil Knight Invitational. But I know all eyes were on the Tide Sunday night, 4 overtime win over the number 1 team in the country. Talk about what you saw from Alabama this past weekend, and especially in that big win over North Carolina.
Well, just a marathon game for Alabama on Sunday. It's amazing how many people I've heard from in the last week or so saying, we were able to catch only a little bit of the first half, but then by the time we finished some activity, we were back in the second overtime, or they only caught overtime, but that lasted an hour. I mean, it was a crazy long game after Alabama had played 2 really good games already back-to-back on Thursday and Friday against Michigan State and then UConn. But I think we saw that Alabama's really good, and I think we saw that Alabama's depth is really strong, specifically in the North Carolina game, because you had Noah Clowney go out early with injury, with a back bruise, and then you had Brandon Miller in some foul trouble, and then he had a tough time getting his shot going for the most part in that ball game. So Alabama had to find some creative ways to win, starting with Mark Sears, who had a tremendous performance, the best that he's had in Alabama uniform, with 25-plus points. Charles Bediako with a double-double, and Charles Bediako was, I think, the best player on the floor throughout all of the overtimes. As tired as everybody was, he was still getting airborne for some dunks for a big block that was maybe controversial if you're a North Carolina fan. We obviously saw it for what it was, as a block, and then ultimately he got some of the key rebounds Alabama had to have in order to preserve this victory. So I was really impressed by just how everybody on the roster was really needed to get those 2 wins over the course of the weekend in Portland, and the fact that as tired as both teams were, I mean, those last 2 overtime periods weren't the greatest bit of basketball we've seen this year, because there are a lot of missed shots, a lot of turnovers, and just 2 teams that were just gassed by the end of it. But Alabama found a grittiness that we really didn't see all throughout last year. Remember, we saw some early in the season, with specifically the Gonzaga win comes to mind, or the wins against Houston or Baylor. But what we saw in terms of a toughness angle really wasn't there for this team throughout most of SEC play, and that's what Nate Oates wants to see continue for the Crimson Tide, not only on this Saturday against South Dakota State, but all throughout the season. How can you find a way to have that will to win translate all throughout the rest of the season and act as hungry as you are against the number 1 team in the country? How do you tap into that on a night-in, night-out basis? So I think that's going to be most important for this group. I think it's a really good sign we're able to see that when so many circumstances in that Carolina game went against Alabama, they still found a way to beat the number 1 team in the country. That was really impressive.
No doubt. Roger Gerhard here. One of the performances that really stuck out to me was Javon Quinterly. I didn't expect him to be back this early, much less playing 44 minutes. What did you make of his performance as he dropped 21 points there in that win over North Carolina?
Yeah, it was really incredible to see him on the floor that much, and he take over when Alabama needed him to, and be creative and get to the rim as much as he did, knock down some 3-pointers. And then defensively, I thought he was really good. You had some of the toughest defensive matchups Alabama had in that game against North Carolina with how good their guards are, and he played at an extremely high level defensively, on top of a good offensive performance and making a lot of key right decisions when Alabama had to have that. So for JQ to be back, we were all kind of going into the season hopeful maybe around this time of the year he'd be good to go, but he made a lot of progress at the end of his rehab and was able to come back against South Alabama, and then the minutes restriction was off in this ball game, and he played at his best. He was really solid all throughout that week in Portland, and I think he's going to benefit, of course, from having a full week of rest, getting ready for Saturday against South Dakota State.
Roger Hoover, the Crimson Tide Sports Network, joining us. Roger, just as you've watched this team, we've seen them in some tough spots. We've seen them in some big wins. What would you say kind of the identity of this team is? We see lots of new faces on this team, some guys who have came in and made a big impact immediately. But what would you say kind of the identity of this team is at this point?
It's much closer sort of the blue-collar basketball that Nate Oates likes to play that starts with defense, starts with rebounding. You know, they made such a huge point of emphasis in the offseason to bring in bigger guards and having just more size. And I think that's led to a lot of good things, not only defensively for Alabama. It's been able to create some turnovers when you're on defense, some fast break scoring opportunities for the offense. I think that's the main thing that sticks out to me. I mean, they just look different than they have throughout any year of the Nate Oates era, with the size they have on the perimeter matched up with all the good size they have in the post with Noah Clowney, Charles Bediako, off the bench, Nick Pringle. It's just a much taller and more physical roster, and it just seems like it's a cut above some of the rosters that Nate Oates has had during his time in Tuscaloosa. And that's no surprise, because this is the first roster that he's truly been able to recruit each and every player that's on the floor. So that's really good to see for this Alabama team, the fact that they're just physically a cut above, and they've passed the eye test, especially against some really great national powers like Michigan State, UConn, North Carolina. There aren't too many players from those teams that you say, oh, they're a clear upgrade over what Alabama has on its roster. I think Alabama's roster matched up extremely well with those elite programs. Probably UConn's the best team I've seen in college basketball this year, and Alabama did some really nice things against them at times, even though that got away from Alabama a bit at the end and losing by 15. The Crimson Tide measure up, and I think it starts with defense. You know, they went into that tournament leading the nation in rebounds per ball game, and there's just a toughness there that we really haven't seen since Oates' second year when Alabama won the SEC.
No doubt, and your schedule comment really helps with what I was going to bring up. Was the month of December doesn't get any easier with the new number one team, Houston, still to come, as well as Gonzaga, who was the number one overall national seed last year. What do you expect to see over the Tide, maybe for the next 3 to 4 weeks before conference play opens against some really tough opponents?
I think it's important. I think they need to keep this momentum going from what we saw, and I think for Alabama to try and get as best kind of seed they won for the NCAA tournament, I would love to see this group find a way to come out of non-conference play with only 1 or 2 losses. Now, it's going to be really tough with the road you described that's ahead for this group. You know, starting with one of the top teams in the Summit League, South Dakota State, coming up this Saturday at Coleman Coliseum, and then the Houston trip is going to really teach us a lot about this team, and we'll see if they can continue to have this kind of hunger and toughness that they had in a neutral site environment. Can they take it to the road? I think Nate Oates was a little discouraged by how this team played on the road a season ago, especially in the SEC. He's looking to see a step forward from this group on the road coming up. So I think it's a really big key test that's coming up against Houston. The Gonzaga game will have all the hype you can imagine after Alabama's great win in Seattle last year, the good season that Gonzaga was able to have following that. And there's still some serious star power between those teams, and we always look forward to that game in Birmingham. I think it's going to be really exciting to have Gonzaga in town in Birmingham this year. So it doesn't get any easier. You got Memphis, I believe, mixed in there as well as another ball game right before Christmas. So December is going to be really tough, but this was also a very tough November slate. And for them to come out of it with just 1 loss, and your 1 loss is to a top 10 UConn team, I think all things considered pretty impressive for what this team's doing right now.
Oh, for sure. Roger Hoover, the Crimson Tide Sports Network, joining us. I want to ask you about the women's soccer team. They're in the semifinals this Friday. They'll take on UCLA. And I know it has been so exciting to watch this women's soccer team really all season long and the success they've had, but really cool that they found themselves in the semifinals.
Yeah, it's incredible the journey they've been on from, last year making it to the NCAA tournament, winning an NCAA tournament game for the first time in program history. By default, that became the greatest year in school history. And then this year they've just been topping that each and every week, it seems like, from going undefeated in SEC play, winning the SEC championship, being the SEC tournament runner-up, and then this has been a really impressive run they've had in the NCAA tournament against a really tough draw in terms of the opponents they've had. Even some of those victories early in the tournament against a Portland or a UC Irvine. I mean, those matches were really, really tough, and Alabama had to play really good soccer to be able to come out on top in those. And then after you get a big lead against Duke, all of a sudden you're tied once again. To find a goal in overtime by Raina Reyes spoke volumes for how good this team is and the resiliency they have. So it's been a pleasure to watch and broadcast a lot of those games all throughout the season, and wish them nothing but the best in Cary, North Carolina. They've got a very tough test coming up tomorrow against UCLA, and if they're able to get past UCLA and into the national championship game on the other side, you have two of the absolute blue bloods of the sport. I mean, this is soccer royalty, women's soccer royalty. Alabama would face in the national championship game against the reigning national champion Florida State, where Wes Hart was previously the assistant coach, and he won a national championship when he was in Tallahassee back in 2014. And then North Carolina, which is essentially the UCLA basketball of women's soccer. I mean, they have so many national championships. Obviously, Mia Hamm played there. It's really the program that put this sport on the map in NCAA athletics. So it's going to be a tough road ahead, but I think this group has shown they're not really intimidated by who they're playing against. You know, they heard all throughout the season, well, you can't get past Arkansas or South Carolina and the SEC, and they blew right past both of those programs. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see the finish they have to this season, and we just hopefully, we're all hoping it ends in the championship on Monday night.
For sure. I'll stay in women's athletics. The basketball team on a nice 3-game winning streak as well. Christy Curry and the squad now 5-2 on the year with a lot of home games to come here in the month of December. How important is this stretch for the Tide women's basketball team?
Yeah, it's also important to keep it rolling. Last night we were on the road in Macon, Georgia, picked up a good win against Mercer, a team that's picked to win the Southern Conference, and Alabama jumped out to an 11-0 lead thanks to two things. First, the defense was great, a full court press that created a lot of turnovers for the Bears. They just couldn't contend with Alabama's length and size, and I mentioned the men's team is kind of a cut above physically from what we've seen in recent years, and the same can be said for Alabama women's basketball, especially with the players they have coming off the bench. They're just taller, bigger wingspan, able to get hands on basketballs and create a lot of turnovers. And we certainly saw that when Alabama was able to turn the Bears over a lot and get some fast break buckets, but also hit a lot of three-pointers. So if Alabama can keep that formula going throughout the rest of the year, there are many SEC teams that can beat them, let alone a team like Mercer from the SoCon. So trying to keep it going this weekend against Chattanooga. It'll be the first part of our doubleheader between women's and men's basketball on Saturday. That game will tip off at noon from Coleman Coliseum, and then both teams will have a little bit of time off for exams, and then the women's team will come back against Southern Miss in Hattiesburg on December 11th, and then after that, like you mentioned, a lot of home games coming up right before the Christmas holiday, just kind of jamming as many games in there as possible to get ready for the start of conference play, which begins December 29th against Georgia. So we're really getting close to it. I guess it's 4 weeks from tonight. Alabama's going to be playing SEC women's basketball, so you better get ready at this time of the season because the most important games of the year are right around the corner.
They really are. This is a super fun time of the year for those of us who love some basketball. Roger Hoover, the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Always great to talk with you, Roger. Appreciate you taking some time with us, and we will talk to you again very soon.
You got it. You guys are the best. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Roger Hoover, Crimson Tide Sports Network, joining us this afternoon. And he brought up a good point with Gonzaga coming to Birmingham. You know, Alabama made the trip up there last year. Mm-hmm. I think that'll be a rocking arena there with Gonzaga, just because people in this part of the country, even if you're not an Alabama fan, you want to get your eyes on this Gonzaga team. So I think a lot of even non-Alabama fans will make their way to this game.
Yeah, and I think both teams are destined to have a really good season. So who knows? These two teams can meet up a little bit later on in March or maybe even April. But it was a great atmosphere last year in Seattle. And I know they expected to make another great atmosphere this time around as it comes to Birmingham. But I love the fact that it's at the same place as the high school basketball championships there at the new renovated BJCC. And so it'll be fun over at Legacy Arena when Gonzaga comes to town. And before that, Houston. So Bama's got some really tough games to kick off the month of December.
They sure do. And appreciate Roger Hoover joining us, talking some Tide hoops and some women's soccer in the semifinals of the NCAA tournament coming up tomorrow against UCLA. We'll grab a break here. We'll wrap up with some NFL talk on this Thursday next.
Get our best
WKXX Live here on this Thursday afternoon. Chase and Gerhard here with you. We're rolling to our final segment here. As got some NFL action tonight as, the Bills on the road at the Patriots tonight. So Bills, Patriots, that's your team there with New England. You excited?
I'm excited. Really, really excited. The Patriots lost a heartbreaker on Thanksgiving Day. A really good Minnesota Vikings team came back and won that football game, and now a chance to get another win in division. Of course, it's against Buffalo, which is one of the best teams in the entire National Football League. But it's a winnable game, in my opinion, for the Patriots and for Mac Jones and company. Meanwhile, for Buffalo right now, they've been rolling the last couple of weeks. Got a nice win on Thanksgiving Day. Beat the Detroit Lions. Also had a win over the Cleveland Browns as well. But they also lost to Minnesota. They also gave up 33 points in that loss, just like New England did. I'm not saying these two teams are equal. I'm just saying that these two teams usually play a really good game, especially in New England. Of course, last year they split their series with the Patriots winning the game that was in Buffalo, that crazy blistery game where the wind was a million miles an hour. Mac Jones threw for 19 yards and was the game leader. Damian Harris, former Alabama star, went off in that game as well. But the Bills got the Patriots in Foxborough in that matchup. So, yeah, it should be really interesting to see how this one plays out. Two teams that, in my opinion, need a win, but the Patriots need it more because they did fall on Thanksgiving. Patriots entered this one at 6-5 on the season. The Bills are 8-3. So if the Patriots want to keep pace in the AFC East, this is a kind of a must-win situation there for them. As far as Vegas line goes, the Patriots are a 4-point underdog at home. So a lot of people just do blind underdogs, blind home dogs in the NFL. If you're one of those, Patriots are the blind home dog. Bills that 4-point favorite. But the Bills are coming in on that 2-game winning streak.
Yep, and so that game is coming up tonight. Amazon Prime Video is where you can watch Thursday Night Football. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit on the call of that one. What are the power rankings looking like this week as we look at another week in the National Football League?
Yeah, not a ton of change here. I think there's no discrepancy about the number one team, the Kansas City Chiefs. Even with their 9-2 record, they're playing some phenomenal football. They remain at number one. The Philadelphia Eagles remain at number two. This reminds me a little bit of what's going on in college football right now. Just no change, especially at the top. Philadelphia Eagles are 10-1 right now at number two. Meanwhile, number three, the Buffalo Bills. That's no change as well. 8-3 on the season. I think a lot of people still love the Bills over the Cowboys, who hold the same record. The Cowboys bump up to number 4. They were number 5 last week. They switched place with the Miami Dolphins, who also hold an 8-3 record. Dolphins going from 4 down to 5. I think you can kind of parse, you split hairs there between those two teams. I think they're about equal as we stand right now through 11 weeks. Minnesota Vikings also 9-2. I think a lot of people like the Vikings, but they just can't get all the way in love with the Vikings. So even with the same record as the number one team, the Kansas City Chiefs, they sit there at number 6. San Fran, despite their 7-4 record, come in at number 7. Cincinnati Bengals come in at number 8. They've been rolling, and I think Joe Burrow and company have really found something that they like offensively with Joe Mixon, who's coming back from injury, as well as with Jamar Chase, who's also coming back from injury as well. The Bengals there at number 8 at 7-4. Number 9, same record, Tennessee Titans, same spot as they held last week. Baltimore Ravens down 7 spots, lost another tough road game, 7-4. They're number 10. Quickly at 11 through 16, the New York Jets, who won a game last week with Mike White as their quarterback. The Commanders, how about them? Vaulting all the way up 13 spots. They're at number 12 at 7-5 on the year. Also 7 wins. The New York Giants going down a bunch of spots. According to this poll, the Seattle Seahawks also going down a bunch of spots. Seattle Seahawks are 6-5 on the season. New England Patriots, who play tonight, come in at number 15. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, the first losing record team on here at 5-6. That's the top half of the NFL. Then following that is the Chargers, the Falcons. They're at number 18. Packers, Raiders, Saints at number 21. The Jaguars are now up to number 22. You have the Lions at 23, followed by the Browns at 24. Cardinals at 4-8, number 25. Pittsburgh Steelers at 26. Indianapolis Colts, the Fighting Jeff Saturdays, are 27th. Carolina Panthers bumping up a little bit to number 28. Chicago Bears at 29. Los Angeles Rams at number 30, of course, losing their starting quarterback and Cooper Kupp, despite they expected them to be down. Denver Broncos, a disappointing season with Russell Wilson and company at number 31, and dead last in the NFL, as we all expected, the Houston Texans, who host Deshaun Watson, who comes back to Houston starting this week.
Yes. You mentioned Jeff Saturday.
Yeah.
The guy came out, I picked him, and he won the first week. I picked him the next 2 times, and he's failed me. He looked like an ESPN analyst coaching on Monday night. That was not good time management from my boy Jeff Saturday. He was not Jeff Monday.
Exactly right. Yeah, and maybe he needs to stick to only weekend games because, the clock management was not good, and it basically cost his team the game.
Yeah, so that some NFL Power Rankings. We'll, of course, have our picks for you coming up tomorrow on the show. That is all the time we have on this Thursday afternoon. We'll dive into a Friday, get you ready for the weekend that is to come. Have a great rest of your Thursday, though, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.